This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode.
This episode is brought to you by CogniView. CogniView provides cognitive assessment tools to a broad range of healthcare providers for the early detection of cognitive impairment. Early detection allows patients to address modifiable risk factors sooner, potentially changing the course of cognitive decline. It also allows healthcare providers to develop a plan with the patient and caregiver so the patient can live their best life during their journey. For more information, go to www.cognivue.com. That's www.cognivue.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I have Katie Matthews with me. Katie is the founder of Legacero, a company focused on end-of-life planning products. Hello, Katie. How are you today?
I'm great, Sarah. Thanks so much. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to further introduce yourself to my audience?
I would love to. So my product, it's called Legacero, and it's an end-of-life planner. The one we have right now is focused for seniors, and in that way, it's built with really large text, lots of room to write, very high contrast and easy to read. But I think it's a product that many of us could use, and I look forward to chatting about all the different situations. I was just listening to your episode with Kristen and her father with Alzheimer's, and it really made me think, yeah, there's a lot of people in the world and a lot of caregivers who could use something like this.
Absolutely. And when we talked a few months ago, I remember you telling me about this, about the end of life planner, and me thinking, I know so many people who could use this. And I know one thing that we have kind of shared in common that we discussed was losing a loved one. I, I think we both lost an uncle unexpectedly, and the trauma and stress that caused. And was that one of the things that led you to creating these planners?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, my uncle passed away very suddenly of a heart attack or cardiac event about 10 years ago. Nobody expected it. And one of the things that came out of it is we realized my aunt didn't have a lot of the information she needed to move forward with daily life, paying bills, banking, all that kind of thing. So that happened, a decade ago. But now at this stage in the life, we're starting to get to the aging parents stage. So my father-in-law just before Christmas moved into long-term care after 2 strokes and 6 weeks in the hospital and dementia, sort of a vascular dementia, as well as Lewy body, some of it related to the stroke and some of it not. And my parents are getting older too. My mother-in-law has been in a very intense caregiver role until my father-in-law moved into long-term care. And I mean, in many ways, she still really is in this intense caregiver role. Combining all of that, we thought, this is something that we want for our own family. And the products we found on the market weren't sort of sufficient for what we were looking for. So we thought, well, let's try and make our own.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's true, an illness, an injury, a sudden death, something can happen. We can have plans or ideas. We can think that we're not ready to do certain, we're not ready to plan the end of life because we're only 40 or 50 or
Yeah.
60. But realistically, end of life it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up on hospice or need hospice care. It can be sudden, it can be unexpected. That diagnosis can change things, and you can be so focused on the care aspect of the diagnosis that you forget to focus on what if something does happen, what if something happens to the caregiver. So is this a product that you could use, I guess, for like couples, like we're both spouses, or is this more something that like you'd want to have individual?
So it's designed for individuals. Right now, there's room for one main person, and they can write information about their spouse as well, but it's really focused on the one main person. So if you are a couple at this point, I'd say sit by two, but I will say we are working on a couples version as well, because I know lots of families and couples would want to plan by themselves. The current version has room for up to 3 dependents, and that was a really specific choice because we wanted to first start with something for seniors. And we know, there's seniors out there that do have dependents. My mother-in-law's sister had spina bifida. So into her senior years, she was a caregiver for her dependent adult sister. We have some neighbors who have the grandparents are the legal guardians of the grandchild. So those situations exist. There's some room for dependents, but it would work for smaller families in the younger age group as well. And that dependent piece is about, for a senior will, which you absolutely should have, you say who you want the guardian to be, but who are some possible temporary guardians that the child is comfortable with and familiar with, that they could be with if something were to happen to you until the formal guardianship was established, things like that.
Yeah. And I think that all that's important too. There's again, end of life planning is so complicated. It's really not just a one size fits all thing. People forget that. Um, there's so much. And is this like if someone can't afford a will, is this a great option, or do they still need legal documentation?
I think everyone needs a will. And this isn't going to be a legal document. The courts aren't going to recognize it. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say either way, but I think everyone should get a will. And I think there's a lot of affordable will options out there. This is a product that's priced around the mid-20s, and it's designed as a supplement to a will. So, your will is going to have what happens to your children. It probably won't have what happens to your pets. And so you want that written down somewhere. Your will is going to have what happens to any estate that you have, but it's not going to have things like, okay, maybe you have a favorite lamp that came from your grandparent that you want to go to this daughter or that daughter, so it's certain items can go in. If you don't pass away but you are medically incapacitated, your living will or advance directive is going to give that medical team the information they need to make decisions that you would want. But for your spouse or for your children who are trying to sort of keep everything together while you're in the hospital and unable to communicate, they still need to know how your mortgage gets paid or your rent gets paid. They need to know how your bills get paid, your car payments, that kind of thing. So there's all this practical information that isn't included in a will, and that's what this is for.
Yeah. And this can obviously extend to more than just end of life too. This can extend to, in case I have a massive stroke, like you said, you're
Yeah.
incapacitated.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and I know that a lot of times that is an issue with seniors where something happens to them and they're, maybe they're in an induced coma for a period of time, and their spouse or their child doesn't know they live in a big senior community. Who do I write the check to? If you don't write the check, you lose that apartment.
Yeah.
In a lot of senior living situations, regardless of what the circumstances are, a good manager a good facility will reach out to the family and be like, hey, listen, what can we do to help you? This is what you need to know. But that doesn't always happen, or if they live in their own home. A lot of times you see families dividing up, possessions of family members before they pass because they have to downsize.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not in a space where they can say, I want this person to have that person to have that. So I can see this working great for that too. Now also one issue we had when my uncle passed away, it was really, on the grand scheme of things, it was such a minor issue, but we wanted to know if he tried to call for help or if
Yeah.
he had time to call for help, because he passed away suddenly, unexpected. It ended up being of a cardiac event. He was found on the floor near his bed. His phone was near him. We could not unlock his phone,
Yeah.
and we wanted to be able to unlock his phone to see if he tried to call for help.
Yeah.
Does your planner have a space for like cell phone passwords,
Yeah.
computer passwords,
Yeah, it
social media,
absolutely
things
does. And the way the planner is designed is we tried to think through, okay, what's the most important things you'll need to know immediately, and then what can wait? And it sort of goes through in that order. And the first part of the planner is called First Things First, and it has computer, how do I get into the computer? What's the cell phone PIN code to get in? What's the voicemail code? Where is my will? Because if you have a will and your children or your spouse don't know where it's kept, that's a huge problem. Who is the executor? What's their phone number? How do I get in touch with them if it's not someone in the family? It has things like, okay, immediately things like advance directive is going to be need to know, and if someone is going into hospital, do you have dependents? Yes or no? If you check yes, turn to page X, because that's where you're going to find all that information. So thinking about the state of mind you're in when someone you love passes away, we've tried to sort of consider all of that and give, the most important information up front and page numbers where you can flip to as you need to solve various issues, problems, find things, that kind of thing. As you were telling the story about downsizing and people dividing up objects in the house, I'm going through that with my mom right now. We're actually getting ready to do a bit of a multi-generational living thing because we're in a very high cost of living property market. And my mom was the executor of her uncle, or my great uncle's estate. I want to say maybe 20 years ago. And as we were downsizing, she found a file where he'd written his own obituary, and my mom had not found it. So he'd taken the time to pre-write his own obituary, and we didn't see it when he passed because there was just this mass of paperwork everywhere that took, years to go through. She's still going through it 20 years later now that she's downsizing. So I think that's another use case here. If you have very specific things you want, like your own obituary, there is a funeral and obituary section in here where you can state your wishes. You can say, this is where to find my obituary if you've written one. You can say there's a section to write about, there's some prompted questions like about your youth, your hobbies, things that you would want included in your obituary. So you can either guide someone to write it when the time comes, or you can say, this is where to find it. And so having all this information in one place helps ensure that you don't leave a mess for your family to clean up, or a huge amount of paperwork, a huge amount of confusion in their time of grief. But it also is a way to make sure your wishes are fulfilled.
And I appreciate it too. And I remember too, when my uncle passed, there was some discussion over the obituary, who's going to be named first.
Yeah,
And
it's stressful.
you know what I mean? Like, which was again, it's ridiculous, making sure that close family was put in there. And, a friend wanted to be mentioned in there too. And we were like, well, we'll do what we can. But like, also I know too that papers charge for obituaries, and to know how many words are you going to get charged if you go over a certain amount, and things like that. What's the most important thing? What would they want said about them when they pass?
Yeah, yeah,
Some people don't want their manner of death, you know, some people don't want that. Some people
yeah,
don't want that discussed, and that's fine. And other people are like totally cool with it. Everybody can know why I died. Like,
Yeah.
it depends on so many, it depends on your person and who you are.
It's a really personal thing. It's a really family dynamic thing, if that makes sense. Was this an open family that everyone's happy to discuss things, or a really private family? It depends on how you pass, because there are lots of diseases that need more research and funding, for example. Then it's very common to like make a case for that and ask for donations. So there's part of the obituary planner or the funeral planner is, do you want flowers? Do you want donations made to a particular charity in lieu of flowers? How do you want that directed?
I love that. Thank you so much. And then I guess another question I have is, if you write something in this planner and something changes, some status or some situation changes, you change your mind about something, you put somebody down as a recipient of something and they pass away, or you have a falling out, or you
Yeah.
just whatever. Is there a way to make changes or edits?
Yeah, so it's a paper planner, and I'm going to use a very technical term now. The paper is 120 GSM, and GSM is grams per square meter, I think. But it's really durable. So what we say in the front of the planner is things that are not going to change, fine, like your birthday, your name, you can fill those out in pen. But anything that might change, fill it out in pencil. And I've tested it with sort of normal weight writing and erasing up to 10 times. And when you're a kid and you're at school and you're erasing things over and over and over again and the paper starts to pill, I've tested it up to 10 times and the paper does not pill. It's a really durable, strong paper. So it's something that's meant to be erased, updated over time. The other thing that you could do, there is a section for lots of passwords and that kind of thing. This is a product that you're going to put your life into it. And so if someone stole it, it would be bad. There's a lot of ways to think about that. I've thought about it a lot because it's my product. In some ways, it helps you get away from data breaches and that kind of thing in the online world, having one thing in your house. But another option would be to take the passwords and then say, the passwords are on a different piece of paper and they're in a safety deposit box, but give some directions in the book, that kind of thing. But it is, passwords, they have to be updated somewhat regularly, especially if you're one of those people that's using a similar password across accounts, that, you get those notifications from Google or whoever that this password's no longer secure. You need to update it. So it takes some personal thinking through about how you're going to manage that. There's the room for the passwords. There's really durable paper that you can erase over and over again. And it's meant to be updated. It's meant to be a living document, but you have to put some consideration to security in it. And, a locked filing cabinet or a fireproof bag that with a locked cabinet, something like that is something that I suggest people consider.
I think that that's a good information too, because I think that that would be a concern that I might have, is if I have it just on my bookshelf and someone breaks in, chances are they're not going to steal what looks like a journal or a planner. But
Yeah.
if they knew what they were looking for, maybe, or if they knew, if they know that, like, hey, all this person's life information isn't here, let's take this, they might. I know I would feel more comfortable keeping something like that in a locked safe box or something.
Yeah.
But also, again, with like, hey, showing the people who need to know that are going to take care of my stuff if something happens, like, hey, just so you know, if anything ever happens to me, there is this notebook in this box in this
Yeah.
corner of my room, and the key is there.
Absolutely. And the planner itself, it's very nondescript looking. So it's like, that vegan leather, it's navy blue. It has a belly band on the outside, which is technical speak for sort of a wrap around it that has the title of the book and stuff, but it's removable. So the actual book itself is just this very nondescript navy blue notebook that's about letter size.
Awesome, thank you for that. And should that be kept with, like, should it be kept with your will, or do you think it should be kept kind of separately?
That's a good question. I think it's personal preference. Like, for example, our will is kept at our lawyer's office. So that was when we set up our will, that was just the option given to us. So I think it depends on how you store your will, how you just how you store your advance directive, that kind of thing, your legal documents. I mean, on the one hand, it'd be convenient for someone, an executor or a family member, to have everything together. On the other hand, it's a single point of failure. If something were to happen to that one storage space, then everything would be lost.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that advice too. I really like the idea of this. I feel like so many people are reluctant to start planning, their end of life, or what if something happens. As far as like, I know initially our plan was to record before Christmas. But my family all got sick, and I actually thought that this would be a great Christmas gift idea. And it sounds a bit morbid, but it's still Mother's Day, Father's Day are coming up eventually.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day. I feel like this
There's
nothing
nothing more romantic than knowing you're taking care of your family and your partner.
exactly.
There
Nothing
you
says
go.
I love you like, here, mom, here's an end of life planner.
Yeah, it's
Mo-
interesting. I've talked to you, and you said, yeah, this would make a great Christmas present for my family, maybe a bit of a weird one for my in-laws. But I obviously, as I've been developing this product, I've talked to my family, my parents a lot about it, so they're really cool with it. But I have talked to customers who, I just talked to a customer yesterday who accidentally ordered extra ones, and she's like, this would be kind of a weird thing to give to my friends, so I'm not sure what to do with the extra ones. And I totally get that too. So it comes back again to family dynamic. I think it's a great way to start the conversation, though. Honestly, another friend, her mom is currently going through a form of blood cancer, and she's ordered the planner, and she's like, well, I don't know how she's going to react when I give it to her. But I think the title end of life planner is intimidating. I think once people open it up and see how practical it is, I think it's way less intimidating. I think it's like, oh yeah, you need to know this. I need to have this written down to make it easier. From what I've discussed with people who have seen this happen in their own life, where someone passes away and the information just is not readily available for the survivors, immediately get it. And people who are lucky enough to have not had this experience, it takes them a bit longer to figure out what it's all about.
yeah. And that's the truth right there.
Yeah.
My uncle's unexpected passing. My mom now has everything planned. Like, she's even picked out her funeral plots and found an urn she liked on Amazon.
Yeah, my
And
in-laws are like that too.
she decided that she didn't want to pay what the funeral home was going to charge for an urn. And she asked him, she's like, if I get an urn from somewhere else, is that okay? Yep. I think she found an urn for like $50 on Amazon. She's like, cool. She's like,
I love
save
it.
me 300.
Yeah.
And it's and again, like you said, though, you have to have gone through it to like understand how much is involved in the passing away of someone. And end of life is a scary term. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
People are afraid to die. That's just the fact. They're afraid of their own mortality.
Yeah.
People are afraid of the end of life. Maybe even when you hand it to someone, be like, listen, I know it says this, but let's think of it as a
Yeah.
just in
Yeah.
case, or a what if.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you prefer to think about it as if just in case you're in the hospital and you can't communicate, what do we need to do so your life doesn't fall apart?
e- exactly. And what do
Yeah.
we need to do? Like, what are your wishes? And maybe not so much for hospital, but again for end of life, for if you pass, And I think it's so, again, I think it's so 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 important. Now I know it says on your website that this is designed specifically for people in the United States. Do you
Yeah.
know, is there a reason why it's marketed that way?
There is, and it's a really practical reason. It's looking at the other products that I could find that were available. Some of the common complaints people had were customers from outside of the States who said, this is designed for Americans. The terminology doesn't really fit with the UK or Canada. So I just wanted to make it really clear to people outside of the US that if you buy this, it's going to say things like, I'm Canadian and we have social insurance number. You have your social security number. So it's designed right now for it has that US terminology. I hope to be able to make one. I mean, I'm Canadian. We're just such a smaller market. So when you're actually just like this solopreneur essentially trying to build this thing, it makes a lot more sense to start with the big market, figure it out, and then adapt if it is successful enough.
Yeah, I think that that's great. And I think that obviously this is something that has the potential to be, customized or individualized for global, or again, like we were talking about, maybe a different version for younger people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and things like that over time.
We have some ideas in the pipeline, so hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a few more versions out there. I think the seniors one, there was a really clear gap in the market that everything that we saw had really small font, used like sort of gray font. It was hard to read. There was not enough space to write. So we wanted to come out with something that really solved that problem as a starting point. But absolutely, I think something that will work for couples. I think something that will work for parents of bigger families. I think there's a lot of opportunity to make it a little bit more specialized and niche down a bit so that people can choose their own adventure based on their life phase.
No, I think that that's awesome. I think that that's great. And again, I think that this came from a genuine place of, I went through a difficult situation and I wish I had this, and even just again talking to you and having a similar experience with losing a loved one unexpectedly. I wish we had this then. I wish 2 Christmases before my uncle passed, we gave him something like this. I could see this as a great thing for a lot of people, senior or even not senior. Again, just
Yeah.
because it's got large print in dark print, it can, you start something like this now, and when you're 90, it can still come in handy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's built to last. Like it's a really thick cover, and then that vegan leather, that has some water resistance to it. So we did really think a lot about durability and how this is going to be something, it's essentially a guidebook to your life that is going to last hopefully a lifetime.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And kind of wrapping up on questions, I'm getting to my favorite question to ask my guests. What is your favorite form of self-care?
Oh, okay, that's great. Well, because it's the winter, I'm gonna say it's skiing for me. I grew up, we're in Vancouver, BC. We have 3 local mountains that you can get to within about 15 minutes, which is so amazing. And I grew up ski racing. And when I got to sort of 18, 19, 20, something like that, I just wanted to travel everywhere. And, skiing and traveling are both very expensive hobbies. So skiing sort of fell by the wayside, and I did a lot of traveling in those years. And just last year, I was able to get back up on the skis. And oh man, like on a beautiful day, you get up there and it's just clear blue and fresh snow. Like for me, there's no feeling like that of sort of just taking care of yourself, taking time out. I love it.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a new form of self-care.
Yeah.
I like the snow when it's not that cold.
You know what's weird is that's the same with me. I don't like being cold, but the joy of skiing outweighs the hatred of cold.
Yeah. I don't mind it being like a little bit cold, but like if it's like when it gets down to like the teens,
Yeah.
nope. If it's like snowing in like the 20s and 30s, like I can handle it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Enough layers are good. But then when it's so cold, it just slaps your face when you go outside. I don't like it anymore.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be slapped by the cold.
And it will do that. But I actually think that that is a great form of self-care because it's a form of exercise, and
Yeah.
and it's a hobby, and it's so important to do things that we love and that, spark joy in us.
That bring joy. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. And then my final question, where can my audience find you for more information?
Absolutely. We are on Amazon, and that's our primary sales channel right now. So it's the Legacero. I'll spell that out. It's Legac, like legacy, and then ERO. So all one word, Legacero End of Life Planner on Amazon. You can also go to legacero.com and /caregiver chronicles, and we will have a discount up there for your listeners.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much, Katie, for taking time to chat with me today. I really love this product. I love this idea. I know what it's like to lose someone unexpectedly. I know what it's like to lose a loved one. I know the mess of paperwork.
Yeah.
I watched my mom go through stacks of paperwork with my uncle and just trying to figure out like the littlest things. And even just the honestly, like I think being able to open his cell phone like in the days following and see if
But
he called for help.
that is such a I put the cell phone code in there from a practical point of view, but hearing that story, I'm just so glad because there's that for all of these things, there's so much more than practicality to it. There's this huge emotional world for the survivors who are left behind, and that's such a good story.
Yeah. And it really is. And people don't realize when you're in that moment of loss, like what that like the littlest thing that you want to cling to or the littlest thing you want an answer to before you have any like serious answers.
Yeah,
You want answers right away
you really do.
when
You don't
something
want to wait.
when something happens. You want to know why, like right then.
Yeah,
Um, and unfortunately, there's not always a why right away. And sometimes you don't find out why till years later.
yeah.
But yeah. Again, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you, Sarah. It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. And again, I will link Katie's info in the bio. I will put the link to her website and her planners, and I will do the one with our code and without. I'll let my audience decide what they need to do, what works best for you. If you liked this episode, please like and share it and send it out to a friend. It helps us. If you want to support us, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee. But really, the best way to support us is to share this episode with a friend or all your friends. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.